Our vote is our voice form. Please mute before we get started. Tonight we have a special guest, and we're going to have a discussion on the state of regional transportation. Thank you each for joining, and we will get started momentarily.
Good evening to everyone, and welcome to 4 Oak Cliff. This is the Our Voice, Our Vote Voter Education Series, and this is our special focus on regional transportation. And I am Candace Wicks. I serve as the Voter Education Chair for OVOV. I'd like to say thank you so much for taking the time out for being with us this evening. I would like to say officially thank you to C.B. Burris for doing the recording, and thank you to our founder, the Honorable Casey Thomas, for doing our live feed. If you have any questions, I'm going to give him the glasses back in a minute so that you will be able to put your questions, people that are on live, on Zoom, into the box, and he will be monitoring that for us. And we're going to go ahead and begin, and we want to thank our guests for coming and being with us this evening. Tonight's guest is Randall Bryant, and he is a prominent Dallas-based political strategist and current board chair for Dallas Area Rapid Transit, otherwise known as DART, and he was elected in October 2025 at the age of 38. He is the youngest board chair in the agency's 42-year history. Currently, he represents the city of Dallas and was elected to a two-year term starting in, as I said, late 2025. On February the 11th, 2026, the Dallas City Council voted to surrender its majority control on the DART board to encourage regional collaboration and persuade cities to cancel their withdrawal plans. Bryant has advocated for this regional effort to maintain the system's integrity. His leadership has come with some changes, especially in this critical period. Several member cities, including Plano, Irving, Highland Park, and others have considered withdrawal elections scheduled for May of 2026 due to funding and governance disputes. Regarding his professional background, he is the president and CEO of Politics United Marketing, and it is a political consulting firm which he founded in 2012. He serves as the Chief Financial Officer for Black Land Partners. In civic leadership, he is the immediate past chair of the Dallas Black Chamber of Commerce and has served on several boards, including the Dallas Citizens Council and the North Texas Commission. He is a graduate of North Lake College and is pursuing, or has pursued, you are pursuing an executive MBA from Southern Methodist University. And in his early career, his political career began in 2007 at Kathy L. Neely and Associates, working on public relations and zoning for major clients like Walmart and American Airlines. So at this time, I would like to present to you the chairman of the DART board. Welcome, Randall Bryant.
Thank you for having me. Hopefully you all can hear me from here. If not, I'll get a little closer. I want to again thank you to Ms. Wicks, Honorable Casey Thomas, and those online to discuss regional transportation. I think Ms. Wicks framed some of the work that OVOV is doing in relations to voter engagement, voter empowerment. I need to do a quick disclaimer so that there's no misrepresentation of anything that I speak tonight. As a chair of the board that's funded by tax dollars, I'm not here advocating for or against any positions on any upcoming elections, whether they be for DART withdrawal cities or not. Just here to share with you high-level overview of what's going on, what's been happening, and what the future may look like if some of these changes go into effect. As stated, I became the chair on October 28th of last year, and one day later, actually, that very next morning, I began to receive telephone calls from various mayors of cities within DART stating that they were calling for withdrawal elections in the next week. The way that DART was formed in 1983, the state law, or the state of Texas, created DART, or created the foundational principles of DART in state law in Chapter 452 of the Transportation Code. And within that law, it allows cities to vote in, and then it allows also for cities to vote out. And cities have an opportunity every 6 years to vote out of DART. Of course, the members, the voters have the final say-so. And so, obviously what we're seeing right now is 6 cities across our region have elected to call for withdrawal elections. As stated, some of the main issues stem around governance, basically the makeup of the board, the size of the board, who gets to appoint how many members to the board from the cities. Funding, on the funding side, DART is funded through primarily through a sales tax model. So anyone that goes outside and purchases a pack of gum at the 7-Eleven, they're going to charge you 8.25% on that purchase. So 6.25 goes to DART, 6.25 goes to the state, and 1 cent goes to the city for the city to operate their general fund, and then the other 1 cent goes to DART to operate our fund. And so that's been the model, that's been the design. It was a very powerful model when it was first created, because in 42 short years, or 43 short years now, since DART was created, it has allowed us to build the second largest light rail system in the country. It's allowed us to build, or to create DFW to have the only airport in this country with 2 commuter rail entry points and a light rail entry point into the airport. And so having the backing of that penny, being able to go out for debt with that security to get good rates on our bonds and our debt issuances was very powerful for the creation and the original infrastructures of DART. With the Silver Line opening up last October, that $2 billion project was pretty much the culmination of all major infrastructure projects that DART committed to in 1983 when the first maps were developed, and the light rail system has been fully developed now with the orange line, the red line, the green line, and the blue line, and then of course now the Silver Line in the northern boundary. And so, we're at a bit of a crossroads now within our organization and how we interact with other cities. And so we have that, understanding of the foundations of our funding. And then on the other side, you have cities that are saying, hey, look, the state of Texas, which again created DART, has also put in additional parameters or limitations on cities financially since they created DART. For example, the state has limited the city's ability to grow their budgets year over year through property taxes. It's at 3.5% now. There are talks about it going down to 2.5%, 1.5%, maybe even 0. So it's limiting essentially cities' ability to grow their budgets. Cities provide services just like DART do. They provide library services, they provide trash services, and all the other things that we enjoy from the city. And so some of our cities are like, hey, look, we want to be a competing city. We want to keep our taxes low. That helps provide economic relief to our residents, but we don't want to give up the things that we enjoy. We don't want to give up the services that we provide, and are looking at DART right now as a possible funding solution for them. And this fight has really been going on for about 6 years now. And it's been down in the legislature, multiple sessions now. It's been fought here locally, and it's really just kind of come to a screeching, not a screeching halt, it's kind of come to a head, where cities are really determining, not necessarily do they support transit in their cities, but can that continuously be executed through a 1-cent sales tax model that's currently funding DART. And so those are kind of like how we got here, so to speak. It's been 98 days since the first cities took their votes, and I, along with our DART board and DART staff, and our allied cities that continuously support DART, primarily the city of Dallas, have been working, I mean, literally every day, all day, every day, trying to find some solutions, trying to find compromises that enough cities will feel confident in the direction, whether it be a new direction or a better direction than what previously we were doing. And so over the past really 48 hours, both the city of Plano, DART, and the city of Dallas have taken some very positive steps towards developing those solutions. The city of Plano delayed their implementation of a microtransit solution that they were planning to do, which was a great sign for us. The DART board almost unanimously last night approved appropriating about $400 million back to the cities. 75 million of it will come from the RTC. That vote will be on tomorrow. The city of Dallas made a great step today, in my opinion, on relinquishing, I guess we could call it, some of the control of the board. If you really look at like population trends, the original DART board was created in 1983. It actually had 25 people on it. I believe 15 of them, or 60%, were appointed by the city of Dallas. In 1995, they did a redo of the board to allow for 15 seats that were all based on population. That year, we had 9 seats. And as you look at population trends of the city of Dallas compared to the suburbs, we're increasing, but the suburbs of the DART system are increasing at a higher rate than the city of Dallas is. And so we've gone to 9 full seats, to 8 full seats, to now at 7.7 seats. And so because we have over 50% of that 7th seat, we control the appointment of it. But again, population trends are shifting downwards. We're at the brink of losing that 8th seat anyways. And so when people kind of look at it from that lens and say, okay, well, these are some of the inevitables that we can get out in front of and show some sense of trying to work with and solve for these problems. Because ultimately, yeah, we can maintain control of 100% of a board of a transit system, but it would no longer be Dallas area rapid transit. It would be Dallas only rapid transit. Or even for the funding part of it, you know, I mean, I'm looking at 13 cities that we have currently within the system, and the value of it is, do we want to ensure that our riders have the opportunity to access and continue to access all 13 cities? If that means some level of reduction, or if these cities successfully withdraw, then there's no access to our riders in these cities. Or if it does, it will come at a higher cost, because what they're trying to implement are microtransit solutions. That will come for a fee. And if so many people do it, if you currently live in Irving right now and you want to go to Plano, if Irving implements a microtransit solution, and Plano implements a microtransit solution, and you live in one city and you work in the other, you got to pay a microtransit fee to get out of the city, pay a DART fee to go through the metroplex, and then once you get on the other, pay another one, right? I don't think really people see that effect of what that truly could be. People are just saying, oh, you're giving away money, which means it's going to cut back services. But, you know, I think we're going to try to go through a very systematic approach to see what, if anything, needs to be cut, because we haven't even got to that part yet. But it will be a reduction of revenues, obviously, so some form of either our capital expenditures or our operational expenditures or our admin expenditures will have to be reduced to make up the difference in the funds, and it's, gonna keep up a bit with inflation, but it will be a little bit of a deflationary effect, on us as well. And so, I think, when you look at what the cities ask for, some are asking for 25% of their money back, some are asking for 50% of their money back. I think we provided something that provides not only some sense of economic relief in the interim, but it actually, if you look at the broader plan, it says, well, let's give up some money. Dallas, let's give up some control. And then let's work together in Austin, which is contrary to the past 3 sessions, where some cities have been on one side, some cities have been on the other. DART's been in the midst of it all, and now let's go down to the legislature and work together on the reforms where we have a better chance of coming up with something that works for all sides. And so that's what we've been doing over the past literally 98 days.
Well, let's talk about something that I heard you say, and you're really great with social media. I must say that you're probably the most visible chair in the history of the organization to actually really use social media to connect with the community.
Yeah.
What I would like to ask you, now, I've heard you say some rough numbers in terms of, let's just say, if Plano decides to leave tomorrow, that all services will be immediately cut off, which means no rail, no train, no bus, no van, no ADA accommodations whatsoever. Has there been any type of media coverage, specifically with, IG and Facebook, to really let people know, now if you say no to DART,
Correct.
this is what's going to happen to your city immediately?
Yeah. So, first, state law states that if a disruption of service to this magnitude were to occur, DART by law and by FTA mandates has to go through a notification process and a public hearing process. And so we actually had our first meeting tonight in the city of Irving. There will be meetings all across all 13 cities over the next couple of weeks, and then we'll have a larger public hearing. So any city that's a withdrawing city, and the routes that are within those cities, because as you mentioned, state law says once you vote, if the cities, if the voters successfully withdraw from DART, all services end the very next day that are performed by DART. Now, they may convince that they are going to continue on those services by themselves, but I'll confidently say DART will not be providing those services any longer. And it goes back to the funding thing, or the payments for the riders. And so it's the public hearings or the town hall meetings are not being held only in the cities that are called for withdrawal elections, because as we say, this is a regional system, and who knows, even if you are a resident of the city, what other cities you depend on, right? What other cities you need to travel to. So all cities will be affected by a withdrawing of any city, no matter how great or how small in size or population that city is. And so we're going through a notification process, and ultimately we have a public hearing on the 24th, and any cities that are still within, that are still calling for elections at that point, we will, be notifying the public, and ultimately, again, if they successfully withdraw, then those services will end. And so we're using, as many channels of communication to get that information out. I have to, tread a very thin line on what my advocacy can be for or against elections, but just want to continue to educate the people on what those possible outcomes are should the voters vote either way.
And I'll just say, being an ADA rider myself, it is very important that our special population is able to get to the health, the mental health and the physical health advocates that work with us.
Right.
And so if we lose any one of the 13, it's going to affect quite a number of people within the ADA population. And then you have family members that need to be able to use transit, not only to get to us, but we need to get to them.
Yeah.
And so there are just so many different concerns that are going to be affected if even one city happens to leave. And I think there's a meeting, is Glen Heights meeting
I think it's tomorrow.
tomorrow? Okay.
Yeah.
So I know that they are also having some discussions on this very same issue. Do you see anybody making any comments? Is there anybody online making any comments, or is there a question regarding anything that he has said so far? Yes, there is something.
Okay. What stops Plano and other suburbs from just demanding their money back every time until, I'm sorry, just a second. Sorry, everyone. Coming up. Okay. All right. What stops Plano and the other suburbs from just demanding their money back every time until there is no money to give? Have they shown they will compromise in good faith? I feel like the citizens could defeat a pull-out election, but a slow suffocation might lead to the entire system being deformed.
Yeah. So I guess I can only go, none of us can go on anything except the actions that we've seen, up until this point. Again, Plano has 2 board members that serve on the DART board. The things that we presented this week, they voted in support of them. That's a good indicator of where Plano is ultimately going to be. As I stated earlier, some of the funds that are going to be expended to reallocate back to the cities is going to come from the RTC. The mayor of Plano serves on the RTC. He's going to have to vote on that himself tomorrow. So, I think we know the deadlines of March the 18th that the elections have to be called off. There's actually some dates even sooner than that in February that the ballots have to be finalized by, that we're trying to beat those dates. I think so I can only go based upon what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. The signals from a majority of especially the bigger cities, Plano's, Irving, Farmers Branch, the larger cities that have contemplated withdrawal election, actually they've gone beyond contemplation, they've voted on them. I think there were strong signals from their representation on the board. The mayor of Irving actually serves on the DART board. He voted in support of it last night. So the signals from them are indeed strong. I think what your other question is like, what are assurances that we have? So essentially, the way we structured or intend to structure the agreement that we spoke about last night is for 6 years. And the goal is for the governance and the additional revenue streams that we've identified that we want to target that will not come at the further expense of DART, but at the expense of the state and other regional mobility authorities, could then be reallocated to the cities in place of what is more or less a placeholder for the DART and the COG funding over the next 6 years. So the agreements will be that any money that we give over that period of time, if anything that contradicts the work that we're trying to do together, whether that be in the legislature or any subsequent withdrawal elections, over the next 6 years only, then all the money that we allocate to them would be clawed back. So that's kind of our protection within the 6 years. Beyond that 6 year, then that's a different conversation. But the goal is to get all the things that we want to accomplish also done within those 6 years. So that's the assurance that we have, at least for the next 6 years.
Okay, I see that you have a document that you have been sharing with the public regarding putting safety first. Would you please share what it is that you are dispersing to the people in the community?
Yeah, so, DART unfortunately gets kind of pinged with crime and things, some things that are completely outside of our control, some things that we should do a better job with, some things that we have been doing a better job with, some things that have absolutely nothing to do with us. There was an unfortunate stabbing this past weekend in Deep Ellum at a bar that's across the street from DART, and because guys were coming out 1:30 in the morning, DART trains aren't even running at that point anymore, and it got quoted that it was near a DART station. I guess they did it for a frame of reference for people to understand, but it had nothing to do with any DART rider, and everyone's like, crime on DART, right? Now, is there crime on DART? Absolutely. There's crime in every city that we serve. Have we experienced some unfortunate crimes over the past year? Absolutely, we have. DART has invested millions of dollars into curbing crime on our system, on our platforms, on our train cars. We hired 100 new TSO officers back during COVID with our ARPA funds. It was a very successful program. Hold it back for a second. So at DART, we have kind of three levels of uniform officers, uniform presence. We have FEOs, which stands for Fair Enforcement Officers. All they do are check tickets. They have, something that resembles a uniform, but their responsibility is for checking tickets and issuing citations for those that don't have proper fare. We have TSOs, which are Transit Security Officers. They are fully licensed, T-code licensed. They carry a gun, they carry a badge, they carry a mace, they carry handcuffs. The only difference between them and DART police is that they can apprehend, they can detain, but they cannot be responsible for booking an individual into Lucedale Jail or Collin County Jail. And then we have DART police officers who actually, same T-code license, all same equipment, but then they actually have the ability to book into jail. And so those are three different tiers. No different from the city of Dallas. Last year, DART hired its largest police class in the history of DART. And so we've been putting more officers on the system, and the big crime numbers that I won't say we care most about, but the ones that make the headlines, crimes against persons, crimes against properties, assaults, robberies, things of that nature, those crime numbers are down double digits over the past 3 or 4 years. What people have kind of misconstrued crime stats being up is what we call crimes against society, smoking on the train, right? Public vagrancies, urinating, things of that nature. And really because we put more uniform officers on the system through the TSO contract, they are addressing more crime in real time. They are serving the benefit of the people. So you see an increase in crime, you see really an increase in responses, whereas that was not a response. So it was more like hidden numbers, right? The crime was down, but the perception of the system was worse. Now the perception is getting better of our system, but those specific crime numbers are up. And the people that, for nefarious reasons or for unknown reasons, have tried to misconstrue that data set to say, oh, crime is up on DART. Well, the crime that matters most, being robbed, being mugged, being assaulted, that's down double digits year over year. The crime that's up are the crimes that we need to be getting rid of on our system. DART removed over 100,000 people from our system last year alone. DART booked in over 3,000, almost 4,000 people at Lucedale Jail last year, second only to the city of Dallas. We are the second highest user of Lucedale Jail, only second to the city of Dallas. What we found out though, and this is where things like deflection centers and better services for people come into play, is for those 3,000, 4,000, almost 4,000 inmates or individuals that we booked into jail, the average number of times that same individual has been booked for same or similar crimes, more likely by DART and other agencies, is 4 times. They don't need a ride around town. They need actual services to,
Services.
absolutely, right?
Yes.
But what they're doing is they're experiencing life on DART trains time and time again, and it's causing trespassing issues and the other issues. It is a really small, minute fraction of the 163,000 people we move around this system each and every day that continuously are causing the macro problems that we're facing. And so, you know, we're trying to work better, have better relationships. We do have 100 beds at Austin Street right now that we use for a deflector center. But we're trying to work with our county partners to increase those opportunities. But that's kind of where crime is. And so, you know, my commitment has been, one of my goals is to, you know, help increase the numbers or decrease the stats, but increase the responses and increase our responsibility. And that is to put even more uniform presence on our system so that we can ensure that we have one, at minimum, transit security officer or uniform presence on every train car and every station platform during all hours of operations. So that's the goal that we have, and it will more than likely take some year-over-year incremental funding to get us to that point. And, you know, in all honesty, it's going to be very hard to even continue to commit to that, given $400 million back over 6 years, right? But that's the vision set for the agency, and that's, you know, how we're, you know, viewing safety here.
All right, let's briefly mention the reduction in some of the routes. And can you please share with the listening audience, how were those routes determined that they would be terminated?
So this kind of goes back to these withdrawing cities. So last year, when we were in the session, a bill was filed against DART to reduce our sales tax collections by 25%. Doesn't take a rocket science, doesn't matter if you're in the public sector, the private sector, or your home sector, to know if your money is going to get cut 25%, it's going to cause some tough challenges for you. And so it was a bill being pushed primarily by some of the same suburbs that we're at right now. It's kind of probably why the question came in earlier of like, what stops this stuff, right? And so DART tried to respond in real time with a funding program for some of the cities. Before I became a DART board member even, there was a study conducted by Ernst & Young that essentially said, okay, how much money is each city allocating towards DART, and how much services are they getting out of DART? And it was pretty much a flawed methodology that accounted for it, but, you know, some member cities took that information and said, hey, look, we're putting in $100 million and we're only getting 40 out, or hey, we're putting in $50 million and only getting $20 million out, according to this study. And so what DART tried to do is provide economic or finance money back to the cities that were, according to that study, putting in more than what they were getting out, right? And that total became $42.5 million. And so to get to balance our budget, because state law mandates we have to approve a balanced budget every September, we went through a series of public hearings similar to what we're doing now, and we put out, hey, look, we're trying to get down to $42.5 million. We showcase, because state law says you can't just take it away without showing what you potentially would do. And you don't want to just show only what the outcomes are. You want to show people a range, and it wasn't really, the public relations part of it wasn't as good as it could have been, because we didn't properly say, hey, these are all of the things that are on the table, and all of these are the worst case scenario, but we definitely will not be choosing all of these things. We need to understand what are the things that matter most to people that we can maintain. You talked about ADA services earlier. The federal law only requires DART to provide paratransit services within 3/4 of a mile of any fixed service. What's a fixed service? Buses and trains. So where a bus route goes, or where a train stop is, the federal law says that DART only has to provide paratransit services, door-to-door paratransit services, within 3/4 of a mile of any of those fixed services. And so it left a lot of gaps in our service if we were to implement that, but it would have saved, I think, over $10 million. And so we advertised that as a possibility. We obviously did not implement that, right?
I remember.
Right. And so what we ended up doing to get this $42 million, because we also, like I said earlier, brought on the Silver Line, which was a $30 million additional expenditure for us. And so what we ended up doing was cutting about $25 million worth of services. The rest we made up in admin, and then we made up in some reduction of capital expenditures to make up for the $42 million, but also the additional $30 million. So we actually went to last year's budget with about a $72 million funding gap, knowing that we were going to pay for the GMP for those 7 cities and knowing that we were going to bring on the new Silver Line. And so the services that we ended up reducing, we tried to put as much of the service reduction on the entire system by reducing the level of service that we provide during what we call peak times. So in the morning, that's, I believe, 7 to 11, and in the evening, it's from 3 to 7. And so during that time, we were providing 15-minute services for pretty much all routes. And we moved that to 20-minute services. You know, there's a probably accurate school of thought that says you put more services out there, more people are inclined to use the service. There's also like, there has to be a threshold because, I mean, if the bus is running down the street every minute, obviously that's not efficient, right? So there is a threshold of quote unquote too much service, right? There's also, you know, light rail vehicles that we've had since day one that need more downtime and repair, right? And so I think, you know, to kind of retool the system to have better synchronization between our buses and our light rail system, our trains, was that. So the effects of that, and we cut, I believe, 9 of our lowest performing bus routes as well. But we tried to put as much of the reduction on the entire system so that everyone could have a kind of buy-in effect to it. It didn't just, you know, cut a Go Link in South Dallas that was on the table or whatnot. And really, that was not because it was underperforming. It's one of the highest performing Go Link services that we have. There's also just so much duplicative services in that area. So we looked at where are duplicative services, whereby if we were to remove a route, that a rider would be able to have a secondary option to take if we were to move that, if we were to remove that. Those changes went into effect February 2nd. We have quarterly reports, and so we'll see what those numbers now are in 3 months from now, or 4 months from now.
Okay, well, we know you have a very big sporting event that will be hitting Dallas shortly, and all the soccer fans all over the world will be descending, as well as the teams and their staff, for, is it FIFA? FIFA. I knew I was going to mess that up. FIFA. FIFA will be here, and there's been some test runs with the commission from the city of Dallas, the Disabilities Commission, as a matter of fact, and some high-level persons that work with the mobility area of DART. So can you tell us your perspective on what that's going to look like once these various countries start descending on our city and the surrounding areas?
Yeah. So the FIFA kind of plan itself is being dealt with a lot by COG, because for Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex, it's not just Dallas, you know, where activities will be taking place. We have the fan zone, I believe it's called, at Fair Park, but the game's going to be played in Arlington. And so Arlington obviously does not have mass transit. There was an article today that came out that said they're looking at it. I hope that they are. But so Arlington is smack dab between Dallas and Fort Worth, and so The plan itself is being coordinated actually by COG to incorporate darts, portion, Trinity Metro in Fort Worth, as well as DCTA in Denton. And so, you know, as you say, we did some testing on what our commitments are. So what our commitments are is utilizing Union Station and EBJ's Victory Station and a TRE to send out fans and would-be goers to Centerpoint Station, and then there will be private shuttle access from there down to the stadium. We've brought in, or we intend to, we've purchased it, they're on the way, additional cars to, you know, ensure we have enough capacity to get thousands of people there and back each and every day. When that capacity is met, and it probably won't take long to meet it, there's going to be a secondary bus bridge through private shuttles again. So DART's not really even responsible for that. We're going to run 3-car concourses all day on the Green Line to and from Fair Park to ensure we're keeping up with demand there. And then kind of going back to where we started with these withdrawal elections, you know, it's going to be important that we maintain that continuity because most, if you actually look at the cities and those that are kind of experienced world travelers, you know, mass transit is the way of life for most other northern parts of this country and most entire parts of other countries, right? It's the only way of life that they know. Most people, they do not drive, they don't even own cars, right? And so how unfortunate would it be for, you know, hundreds of thousands of people from other continents and other countries to show up to Dallas-Fort Worth and not have a transit system that resembles anything close to, which is, what we have is already, you know, probably a downgrade anyways, but it potentially would be even worse if we did, I mean, because if all cities withdraw, that's 33% of our funds right there, right? Mm-hmm. And so we don't want that. We don't want that for our region. That would be the black eye. That's also why the Super Bowl has never come back to DFW because we have not figured out that connectivity piece through mass transit in Arlington. So, you know, I think we've done some testing. We used the Cotton Bowl game back in early January or end of December to test out the bus bridge and all those things. We used the Texas OU game to test out our plan for the fan zone with the Green Line. And so I think we're in a good place. I think we just want to make sure we continue to keep all cities in and that, you know, those fans that are coming that are being Airbnbs or hotels or whatever, ensure that they have a good plan for us.
Okay, while you take us a little break in, we have another question from our Zoom audience. And thank you so much for being with us again.
Yes, and we may have some questions from the audience as well, but this one is, follow-up question. Is this current proposal different from the 5% GMP first proposal?
Yeah, it is different. The biggest difference is the first 5% GMP proposal was only 7 cities qualified for it. And those cities were identified by that E&Y study. This new proposal is for all 13 cities. Regardless of how much services you get out of DART compared to the amount of money you put in, going back to kind of the bigger themes, all cities have the financial constraints of limitations on their growth. All cities have 4A, 4B constraints. And so just like the governance, no DART and any city isn't saying, let's go down to Austin and say only Farmers Branch get a seat, right? We're not trying to approach governance from a one city or a few city approach. And my position was we should not be approaching funding from that same position either, only to apply for one city or a few cities. And so that's really kind of been the better, I want to say pitch or sell, because I'm not selling anything here. I'm trying to bring some resolve to fights that have been almost a decade long, and get a better viewpoint of what it is that we have and what it is that we can go and achieve. And so that's the difference. Obviously, it's a little bit more money. It's 5% with a 1% compounding year over year. That is going to be split with the COG. And so our DART's ultimate commitment is 7.5%. COGS is 2.5%. But of course, I didn't go much into this here, but the ultimate goal is to get components 2 and 3 approved by the state legislature, which is transferring our regional rail system, our Silver Line, and our TRE, our commuter rail system, to a regional mobility authority, which have already been discussions that have been taking place with the RTC anyways. And the expenses that we incur each year for the operation and maintenance and the capital for that, we would then send that money back to the cities with zero effect on the riders, because it's now funded through a completely at same values, but from a different source. That would probably save us about 15% of our budget. The other 10% we intend for it to come from a vehicle registration fee. There are about 7 million vehicles in the 16 county COG. 4 million of them are not in a transit authority, but everyone has the opportunity to benefit directly from the transit system by getting on it, right? Everyone indirectly benefits from the effects of DART and DCTA and Treaty Metro by meeting air quality attainment goals and relieving traffic mitigation. They all benefit from that, and they don't all pay into it, right? And so the idea is to tax or put an additional fee. There's already vehicle registration fees that the county imposes on every vehicle, regardless if you're a transit authority or not. But the idea is to impose an additional fee to any car that's registered in the city that's not a part of a transit authority. We think that can give us about another 10%. When those two components come together, then there will no longer be any more need for dollars to be expended from DART to reallocate back from the city, because those two pools will be the funds in perpetuity. And so this may very well be something that could get done in the next legislative session. And the experiences of service cuts that we've already felt would be the end of it. We will not experience any additional service cuts. So that's also, the glass half empty, half full, viewpoint on it.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So with transferring the commuter rails to the COG, that would introduce new costs to the COG, I assume, for maintenance and debt and all that sorts of that?
Yeah, well, and we use the COG as a loose term. The more specific term is a regional mobility authority or an RMA, and those concepts are already in state law. There's I believe in Bexar County, they have an additional assessment to go towards a regional mobility authority to build roads, right? And so these aren't new concepts, they're already enshrined in state law. So it would be, that regional mobility authority would either own it or manage it. And I use or because there are some federal guidelines that say when you take federal money to do things, you can't just abdicate your responsibilities to it, even if it's going to continue in with somebody else taking ownership of it, right? And so I think we're still working out those details, but essentially, yes, the monies that we intended to use for the regional rail system would then need to be sourced through the state, right? And then funded directly to that RMA to be able to account for it.
Yeah, so the vehicle registration fee wouldn't be going toward that, it'd be going toward
Correct. The vehicle registration fee would also go to the RMA.
Okay.
And then the RMA would disperse it back to the third split.
But it goes to all the players.
Yeah, but I mean that's how money comes to us right now.
Yeah.
Sales taxes is derived in a business. It goes to the comptroller, and then the comptroller sends it back to DART. So I mean, money goes to a lot of players right now, anyways.
Okay, And would the transferring of the debt to that new entity, would that give DART greater flexibility in, say, buying new trains and
Yeah,
buying?
if we were able to transfer the entire ownership, then the intent would be to transfer the debt as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the trains need an upgrade, like you said.
Right.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
We got one last question. Honorable Rick Wilson, former deputy mayor.
We finally got it in.
You touched on so many things that, and this is one area that I'm very passionate about. And unfortunately, I don't have enough time today, but I'm going to have to maybe do my own just to be able to talk about some of the things. But I'm going to try to be brief. All right, so this model, I'll be doing this. So this model of we want to take our money out, we want to do with this. And I know cities are often copycat. Where is this being done else in the country?
Where are other transit authorities sending money back to cities?
Yes.
I don't know if I have any examples of that,
Okay,
but
you don't, because
Yeah.
they're not. What about other countries?
I definitely don't know any
Oh,
other
okay,
countries.
so they're not. And it goes back to the fee for this coming. Those individuals view public transit as a right. It just is. We're taking a step one backwards. For example, our previous bond, one we just passed was how much?
Oh, it was 1.4, I think.
And the one before that?
It was a little over 1.1, I think.
So my question to those cities and the logic here.
I think you're talking about City of Dallas bond, right?
No, DART.
DART's on the, well, DART did a bond, it was really it wasn't performative, it was, in 2000, we took a vote to allow us to pledge our penny towards bond debt. It really wasn't a bond vote, but, yeah. So we've only done that once in 2000.
So those cities that want to be removed, what happens to their portion of the bond that they?
Oh, yeah, they have to continue to pledge their penny year over year until, so, let's back up. So if a city were to successfully withdraw, state law says all services end, and then the board actually has to take a series of votes on accounting for, and this has happened before. Remember 1989, Flower Mound and Capel left, successfully withdrew from DART. So we know, we've seen this before. And so the board will take a series of votes to say, you owe us this amount of money based upon these different things, and I won't go into that part. Then we notify the comptroller, and the comptroller continues to collect the sales taxes in those cities and allocates the penny then to that debt, and that estimates some cities owe us 3 years, some cities owe us 30 years worth of sales taxes in their city, right? Just based on estimations, it's not guaranteed, right? But if I could go back to before you make another one, if I go back to your first one, I think I definitely can't come up with any examples of a transit authority giving money back to cities. And I also just kind of want to make sure the idea is for not to be the sustaining model of DART, that these other two new revenue sources, because I can give you countless other transit authorities that are not funded only by a sales tax. You know, most other, I serve on the APTA board, the American Public Transportation Association board. Most other transit authorities are floored. They cannot believe that we have a 1 cent sales tax because it's so strong. They cannot believe that we have that sense of comfort, that sense of guarantee, because they have a county, money that comes from the county budget, money that comes from the state budget, money that comes from tolls, money that comes from parking fees. I mean, all types of complex funding structures that they have to year over year go back to those appropriating bodies to beg, so to speak, for that money, right? And because we have it and it comes regardless year over year without regard, cannot believe that we have that, right? And so definitely can't give you any ideas, any other cities that are doing the short-term thing, but can definitely point to other transit authorities that have multiple streams of revenue that's diversified. Because let's just say, what if the penny does fail? right? What if we face 2008 or 2020 where we had to make massive cuts because no commerce was happening, no business was being conducted, and our sales tax projections came way under, right? And so that's kind of the blessing and the curse of it. It's a strong backing. Our bonds are backed by the penny, which is also why the state did not self-impose, because we may have defaulted on our bonds if the state did that. And there was a precedent that they weren't willing to do, but the state also said, hey, you all go figure this out because y'all got us on that one this time, and we don't know. And truth be told, that bill got voted out of the House committee with Democratic support. Our grip on the state legislature is not as strong as it's historically been, right? Because we saw then Democrats start getting soft on the stance of DART because they've, quote unquote, in their opinion, bailed us out time and time again. And either we have not properly educated them on the changes that we have made or the compromises that we've tried to seek. But that was, and I was there almost every day last year and was new to it because I had not been on the board even a year at that time. But that was what was coming out of even Democratic offices. It's like, I can't believe this is down here again, and I don't know how much I can keep telling the broader state legislature no to these bills.
And let me just say this. I want to applaud you because you said it so eloquently and you present the information. I'm not going to be that way. I'm just going to be straightforward. The reason I asked that question about who does that, because it doesn't make sense. And like I said before, the idea of taking away money from her is the dumbest idea I heard in terms of if you're trying to grow a region and you're trying at the same time, you're trying to say, hey, our air quality is bad, and this is people are having to do this, but you offer no alternative. The idea of let's think this through, what happens if this happens, scenario that you gave, like Irving and Plano deciding that they were going to go their own way. The idea, so instead of the tax that you're being taxed now, you multiply the tax of the people that use your service. And you really limit your growth because now.
Increasing fares?
Yeah, you increase the fares
Okay,
because
yeah.
you got Plano fare, you got urban fare, you
On
got
the
car
riders.
fare. Yeah, the riders.
Yeah.
Right. If you do, basically what you're trying to do is you move towards more of I see them trying to move towards more of a privatization of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if each city had its own privatization, they had their own fare, their own governing. And then how do you work when you cross city lines and what tax do you pay or transfer?
Right.
So you end up taxing the rider, the users, even more than what you have right now. And the idea of how this actually works is I'm not hearing the alternative. I hear a lot of let's do this, but what's the alternative? So the reason I asked that question, who's doing this, it doesn't make sense. And nobody else does that in terms of public transportation. We see it the way it is now, but if you're exposed to greater or outside this country, or even certain parts of this country, it's different and it works best. And when you're talking about moving people around for work, to go into the grocery store, to play, we have not done the greatest of that in terms of our planning. And even the cities that are complaining about the services, their growth model is great, but in terms of how you integrate that into public transit, that part always came as an afterthought. Because if you look at the region has always done that. Look at our highway systems. Mm-hmm. We will go 30,000 homes down somewhere, and we need to widen the streets. Mm-hmm. How do people get in and out of So that idea of planning goes into it. And I know that DART has this plan and tries to communicate that with other cities in terms of their development. But the problem is the development will move faster than the transportation side of it because a lot of it comes from federal and state funding in terms of how that's done. So there's always going to be that gap. And I hesitate for those areas that say, yes, we're not receiving our services. Because you may mention in terms of based upon population. So I'm trying to figure out how do we calculate in terms of number of seats 1.3 million people to 229,000 in terms of your representation on the board.
Okay, I'll get to that in a second.
Mhm.
So, now, on the reallocation of the money back to the cities, the law says you can only use it for chapter 452 related projects, right?
Right.
Now, Irving last night said, I'm gonna take my $5 million and bring my 2 routes that DART cut last year, which is $2.3 million, right? So, all cities have, what kind of a bigger global theme is, cities have a little bit of self-determination on part of our budget, or where money is going to be directed in their city. Do they want to repair a street, or do they want to give it back to DART and put more services back in the system? They still have that ability. Dallas is going to be the biggest benefactor of the money here, $211 million estimated. Dallas can very well say, hey, we want to ensure local services are maintained. We want to bring new services to Southern Sector, and they have the full range, and it should be advocated, right? That, because I think our responsibility was to put something in place that applies to all 13 cities. But again, and even to like, if you looked at some of the lists, and I mentioned it last night, Irving would be set to get about $54 million back. They wanted a site, they specifically asked for us to also build them a station at the Texas Stadium, right? They're trying to think forward with developments that obviously is happening there, right? So we said, hey, look, you're gonna get $54 million over 6 years. If you want to dedicate 30 of it to it, that's it. So I think some cities are going to look at it only as a cash grab. I think some cities will more strategically look at it and how can we at least maintain what we have of services. Some of them may look to increase services, some of them may look to do a little bit of both. I think that's really what the bigger conversations for us were. This is 5% up to 10% of our budget. Ultimately, it will be 25% that we're going to be able to affect to us. But you have a little bit more of self-determination in your cities, because for me, as a DART board member, or for us as an agency, you know, there's 15 council districts in Dallas, and there's 9 in Garland, and then there's 7 in Addison. So meeting with all these people to ensure, hey, look, I want to ensure that all the services that are needed for you and your communities are being met. It's very challenging. But for us to set aside the money to each city and say, hey, look, you tell us if you think, because then now you're responsible to your voters, right? If you think a traffic signal is the best thing for $100,000, then you say that, and you make sure you're responsible to your voters when they either lose a transit service or they don't have the ability to keep, or whatever, right? So it's really kind of trying to meet the broader demands of some cities that really do want the money to do something non-transit, and basically all they'll do is whatever they had slotted for transportation-related projects in their general fund budget, they'll now pay for it with DART funds and then transfer that money to do something else in the general fund, economic development or whatever. It's a moving of deck chairs at that point for them, right? But I do wholeheartedly believe that quite a few cities will maintain services with the money that we're offering to them and give it right back to us. I do believe that. And like I said, the mayor of Irving said last night, he said, our first year will be $5.4 million. DART, you cut 2 routes in my city with the new plan we did, the February 2nd plan, and it costs $2.3 million. I'll tell you right now, if we go through this plan, I'm gonna put the $2.3 million back into DART to make sure that those routes stay in place. On the governance thing, okay, I said a lot between when we asked your question. I'm trying to remember where you were at though. 1.3 million people, and if we had 7 people on the board representing them, and actually that was my biggest issue with the governance. Not an issue with the governance, but one of my biggest concerns. Right now, you have kind of a balance of what one board member is responsible for, regardless of its number of cities, but the number of people, right? And the bill, actually, let's go back to the legislature. Senator Tam Parker filed Senate Bill 2118 that would have taken the 15 members on the board down to 13, and Dallas only getting 1 person on the board. Okay, so that would have been 20% right? So, bigger picture, that's where people are trying to take us to if we don't try to do something first, okay? Obviously that bill got defeated as well. What then was kind of the consensus was every city should have at least one person appointed to the board. Regardless of how much of a voting strength that they have, these cities, some of the smaller cities in particular, felt like their voices were not being well represented, because some cities have, let's say the individual from Richardson, right? So Richardson has the largest voting share of 4 cities: Highland Park, University Park, Addison, and Richardson. They all share one person, but only Richardson has the authority to appoint the person, right? And so if obviously the needs of University Park, Addison, Highland Park, and Richardson are unique and different, no different from District 3 and District 8, right? But so what they're saying is like, hey, we may have similar interests, but how much of a voice do we truly have that's isolated when we have someone else representing us? Okay, so one city, one vote. Well, when you start with that, you got 13 cities. Right. So that's already 13 people, and Dallas already at 8. So that's going back almost to the original board of 25, right? But I mean that's the existential threat that we're facing, right? Then it was, well, we don't believe that one city should be able to control, and obviously the one city is Dallas, be able to control the appointing power of a majority of the board, right? So again, kind of what I was sharing earlier, these population trends were already about to hit anyways. We were on our way to 46%, basically 7 of 15. We're on our way to that in the next 5 to 10 years because we reappropriate our seats every 5 years. We go through that kind of shuffling of pairing of cities every 5 years. We just did it in August. Dallas maintained the ability to control that 8th seat, but it's now at 7.78. Once it crosses 7.50, we don't have the authority to appoint the majority of that seat any longer, right? So we were already on a pathway to do that. And really, if you look at probably who would get that next seat and where our current allies are, and there are so many votes that require supermajority vote to approve our financial plan, to add or reduce services over 5%, to even issue debt, right? And so in any scenario of a governance structure, we have to maintain allies. What's been historically on my tenure as our allies on the board? Now, that's real clear. And so they came back and said 40% with 5 people, and I was like, well, wait a second now. Clearly, if we have 8 and going down to 5, some people are going to be left out. And I was probably going to be the first one to raise my hand and take that deal, because after this, I'm out of here. but I said, you know, there's different state laws that, for example, only Dallas, and really only Dallas in a couple things. Only Dallas cannot withdraw from DART, and DART no longer be DART. DART must have one city that has 1.1 million people. Okay, all these other cities can leave, and DART will still be DART because Dallas still is 1.1 million people. But if Dallas withdrew from DART this May, DART no longer exists. Okay, so state law says that Dallas must appoint someone from the disabilities community. No other, the suburb cities don't have that requirement. So at first, when they were talking about having 20 board members, 5 from Dallas, 15 from the suburbs, I'm like, well, hell, that's a big disparity for us to carry that burden, not that burden, but that priority, right? The second one is the chair must flip back and forth between Dallas and suburbs, right? So again, the pool of people for Dallas is only 5 to select from. The pool of people from the suburbs would be 15, greater pools of people. DART rules say the committees must be balanced between Dallas and suburbs. So again, you're burdening the workload of 5 people that they have to be spread on multiple committees, where 15 may only have to sit on one committee, right? And then the final one was really the correlation between Copper Hill has a population of 3,873, I think. One person representing the interests of 3,000 people versus one person representing the interests of 280,000 people, right? And so we went through this back and forth, and we ultimately landed on having 7 seats. But the 7 is not really important, because the 7 could be 7, the 7 could be 700. What's the most important number is the 45, right? So that's kind of the minutia and the sausage-making process that got us to that point. But again, I think on the governance, if Dallas had 40%, 45%, 50%, or 52% what we currently have, you know, because so many important votes, not the consent agendas and not the minutes and stuff, but the most important votes that we have to take on an annual or a couple every year basis do require supermajority votes, then that greater number is the more important number than just what Dallas is maintaining. And really, if you look at, I shared this with my comments this morning at City Hall, if you look at the population of each city versus the population that they are to, you know, presumably get, if all cities stay and we get this government structure passed, from population to representation, Dallas was at 52% on population, or 50% on population, 45% in representation. That's if you divide those numbers, it's a 14% reduction. Plano was at, I think, an 11% reduction. Irving was at about a 5% reduction, and Rowlett was at a 21% reduction, right? So, again, and this is kind of what my quote was, at this point, it's not about winners and losers, right? Because you can say, oh, I'm losing this, but I think everyone's trying to figure out how to give up enough that's reasonable to try to make something better and make it work. Yeah, and you know, I think, you know, our next step, once we get past this, is going to be, you know, what our service standards are and what our capital project commitments are and what our, you know, all those things could be. And y'all been through budget processes before, and it's a very tough thing to do.
And I'll just last one, and I think you kind of answered it, talked a little bit about it. With Dallas having to be the only city there, but in terms of the other cities, in terms of budget rating, and budget impact,
Right,
and bond impact,
right.
does it not, or would it not impact not only DART's bond, but the city of Dallas
They're being paid off debts faster, yeah.
and the state of Texas?
Yeah, and also, this kind of goes back to where we were at before, on governance and funding. The kind of the goals, at least for me, were to not only find a solution for the 13 cities, but also create a pathway for new cities, okay? So let's go back to the funding. If we are able to identify these new sources of revenue that should equate to about 25%, once we do both of those things, we no longer need any additional funds from DART or the COG, right? And once we can demonstrate our ability to bring in that 25% year over year, then we could self-impose a reduction to 0.75, right? Again, at zero risk or reduction of services to the riders, because the 25 is all new resources, right? Once we reduce the rate to 0.75, there are cities that can't afford a full penny, but there are some cities adjacent to the DART member cities that can afford a 0.75 entry fee, let's call it, into mass transit, right?
I'm sorry, that is my final one.
Okay.
So those that want to leave, is there a mechanism that we can say, all right, it's been good, it's been real, and invite other cities that want it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we can invite. They have their cities have to vote.
Okay,
Yeah.
they want it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we should be inviting them every day, and then when opportunity strikes, we should be ready.
Right.
But there are some cities, because their penny is pledged, or parts of their penny is pledged, that they just, unless they took a vote to undo those things, could not repledge a penny. The only other option is the state needs to increase sales tax caps on members of transit authorities, right? Which is another option, right? But if we were able to reduce down to 0.75, there are some adjacent cities to the current 13 cities that could afford a 0.75 rate to enter into a transit authority. And you work that system for quite some time, and then you find even additional revenue sources, going back to what I said earlier, there's some transit systems that have over 30 revenue streams, like real revenue streams, not like 0.5% of the revenue,
Exactly.
like the real revenue streams.
40% of Chicago's one is from the state.
Yeah, right,
Is that
yeah.
about right?
Yeah, And once you do that, once you can demonstrate at 0.75 and bring in new revenues to go down to 0.5, then you have even more adjacent cities that can afford 0.5. But the same thing on the governance with the one city, one vote, you also can tell a new city, hey, when you come in, you can appoint your own person.
Right.
You don't, so again, it's gonna get tight for a short, hopeful period of time at DART. But I wholeheartedly believe between what the restructure is on the governance and what the restructure is on the funding model provides an opportunity to stave off, not just elections, but to continue fighting. We have DART staff that have been here 2 years, 3 years, that all they know is fights. And all their days have been consumed with fighting with member cities and responding back and going to this meeting over here and going to that meeting over there. And it's not the true duties and responsibilities that they were hired to do, which is make the system better,
I
right?
don't believe in keeping people that don't want to be kept.
No, I understand that.
So, I mean, like I said, those cities that continuously are using it as a bluff, or not a bluff, or just continuing.
With the rate, yeah,
Let's find a way to help them succeed in what they want.
yeah,
You don't want to be successful here, let's help you be successful somewhere else.
yeah.
And you can do that and bring somebody else who wants to be part of it. That's,
Well, no city because there's like rules of adjacencies to current DART cities, but no city has a full penny that's unpledged by voter approval.
correct.
That's adjacent to DART. So even if I say I'm gonna give you up and try to find somebody, there is nobody else, right? Unless they took a vote to undo
Right.
their penny, right? And that's actually
That's what I'm saying.
but that's actually the thing about this whole DART deal that most people actually don't even have a clue. We talked about if the penny was pledged for a number of years after.
Mhm.
After that, actually, the voters have to take another vote on what to do with the penny then. It doesn't just go back to the general fund because it's already been appropriated. They have to take another vote, and that's gonna create another fight amongst them then because of one of the priorities of the city now, that sales taxes are not going to transit. Where do we want to go? Do we want to go to police? We want to go to parks? We want to go to, economic development corporations? And that's just going to create another fight for those cities that successfully withdraw after they pay off their.
But that's not what they're telling me.
Oh, of course not.
And that's the thing that's not being said is what happens after you do this.
Right.
The reality of what you're gonna have to go through is like, okay, you're still gonna have to pay us the bond for the next 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Why you go do whatever you wanna
And if
do.
you're going to provide transit in your city that's replicative of what DART is, going to have to come out of the general fund.
Right, so you're not telling your constituents that, hey, we're gonna have to raise your taxes because we're paying for two systems and we got a debt over here and we got a debt over here.
Correct.
So, again, that's what I was talking about, it's a lot of posturing.
Yeah.
But I just think that you're on the right track in terms of, hey, let's just talk this through.
Yeah, right.
Be sensible about.
I'm confident that some cities will call off their elections.
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense. Once you get down to the nitty gritty, people start actually, somebody asks, what happens then?
Mhm.
What happens next?
Right.
Then they're gonna have to answer that. It's like, well,
Yeah.
we're gonna withdraw, we owe DART for the next 20 years, but we're gonna provide service.
Okay.
And what we're gonna provide service is we're gonna have to increase property taxes. Oh, and by the way, your state legislator said they wanna decrease the value of property taxes.
Correct, which will make it harder.
Which is gonna make it harder. So the fight really isn't so much in terms of, it's more of the state
Mhm.
and those individuals that are there representing them
Mhm.
that's causing a lot of this.
Correct.
Now, I'm just gonna say it loud, say the quiet part out loud.
Well, that will have to be the final comment for this evening. And of course, we know that we could go a little bit further with that. However, time is ticking and we have dark here. So, with that having been said, we want to say thank you to
Thank you.
Randall Bryant for being here tonight and representing DART very, very well. And I know that the Zoom audience was very pleased at the answers that they have heard. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We do appreciate you. Thank you again to Mr. C.W. Burrows for recording. And you can see this on YouTube in the next day or two. So, be back with us next month. we're going to have Joseph Winters, a former ICE agent, who is coming to Fort Oak Cliff to answer your questions. Joseph Winters has a book out regarding immigration reform. We will be discussing that, and he is known as the ICE Whisperer on YouTube. So we're looking forward to seeing him in March. Take care and check us out on Facebook. Thank you. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a good night.